Welcome to the BitGeek podcast. I'm your host, Ron Avis, and with me on the couch to my left is the Prince of Pixels himself,
Nick Wright.
and today we're going to talk about our 10 favorite N64 games ever.
I just want to say, I was SNK'd.
You were SNK'd.
Yes.
What do you mean?
Remember the other day when we were talking about like our most disappointing times in gaming history, and I was talking about how the Neo Geo Pocket and the Neo Geo Pocket Color were released just within months of each other, just so soon. Well, I got on the Nintendo Switch, it was like maybe 2 weeks ago, Fatal Fury 2 came out on the Nintendo Switch with the kind of eShop, kind of virtual console thing they're doing right now.
Right.
And so I thought, hey, Fatal Fury 2, cool.
I like SNK games, and
Yeah,
I like Fatal Fury games.
Yeah, and it was, it was kind of the first one that introduced Mai Shiranui. Kim Capwan was always a favorite of mine. So yeah, sure, I'll pick up Fatal Fury 2. So, I get it. Well, this past Friday, Fatal Fury Special came out. Now, I know that you're not as familiar with like the Fatal Fury games.
Yeah.
But you are familiar with Street Fighter. So let me put it in these terms. That basically that's like if the original, vanilla Street Fighter 2 came out, right? Mm-hmm. And oh, hey, cool. Yeah, I reminisce about Street Fighter. I played that back in the day.
Yep.
And then a week later, they released Street Fighter 2 Champions Edition.
Why the hell did I just buy Street Fighter, regular Street Fighter?
which is Street Fighter with the bosses, basically.
Oh my god.
That's Fatal Fury Special.
You got SNK?
I got SNK. That's Fatal Fury Special is Fatal Fury 2 with the bosses and a couple other extra characters that were in Fatal Fury 1. So I had to get it. I mean,
well, they could have spaced it out a little better, right?
Yeah, I mean,
it's going to happen.
It wouldn't be nearly as sting nearly as much if it was spread out more. But since it was just like within a week or 2 weeks, it was like, really?
Yeah, because like every week they would release some kind of new SNK classic. They've already released 2 of the Metal Gear games.
Yeah.
And
and like they had Metal Gear 3, like Metal Slug 3.
Yeah, not Metal Gear.
Yeah. Metal Slug 3 was released like back like March, like when the Switch first came out.
Right.
And only just recently they released Metal Slug 2.
So much so that I had to go, did they release another Metal Slug game? Yeah, they did.
And
3.
to me, I like 2 was like my favorite one. 2 or X, they're basically, X is like the Champions Edition.
X 2. Is like the one where they kind of like, did they sort of change how like, how like they would have slow-mo endings in the Metal Slug games? Did they kind of like change that to where it didn't have that slowdown a little bit?
Oh, you just mean like when just so many enemies are on screen?
Yeah, like chugging along.
Bogged down. No, I mean that was just a thing about the hardware.
Right. Okay. But yeah, X. I'm aware of X, and it's just like the most polished version, basically, right?
X was, like I say, it was Champions Edition of Metal Slug 2.
Yeah, that's kind of shitty, man. I don't know. It's only $8 at least this time. Yeah. You didn't fully go out and buy a whole new handheld. But it is really comical that we were just talking about that, like literally last week.
Yeah, so as soon as it happened, I was like, I was SNK'd.
We're going to have to get you a t-shirt that says, I've been SNK'd. You've been snicked. Nick's been snicked.
So anyway, our topic for today.
Topic for the day is the N64, our 10 favorite N64 games, in no particular order, in is tradition with our previous lists. And it's funny because we got to the N64, which we've been kind of climbing that ladder. We did the 8-bit NES, which we both agreed was probably each of ours most nostalgic. The classic just came out, and everybody's feeling that nostalgia. And I felt so much for the NES, the original classic. I loved it. Yeah. And the 16-bit, we did that next, the Super Nintendo. Mm-hmm. And I think we just sort of say, like, you could argue that the 16-bit area of games were the best. I mean, like, the graphics, of course, have gotten better. Sound has gotten better, but the mechanics and the play of the games.
Yeah, definitely a.
It's more timeless than the 8-bit version era of games. So when the N64 came along, I was like, well, what's so special about N64? I mean, yeah, I liked it and I had it and I bought a lot of games. Then I started thinking, well, wait a second, the N64 is special and unique because it was the very first like made for couch co-op, 4-player, anytime you needed it. System.
That and just such the polish of 3D. I mean, the PlayStation was already doing 3D and polygons and whatnot, but to me, though, like the Mario 64 and the Zelda 64, it was a huge, huge milestone in gaming, I think.
It was as if Sony was just sort of dabbling with 3D, like with games like Jumping Flash.
Yeah, and Nintendo, I think, really polished it.
They came out third, and it got delayed a little bit. And when it came out, oh brother, I mean, it was just so much better in most ways. It was like the most fun system, and I got into PlayStation a little bit later, but I was already like hurting from the Saturn. As another one we talked about, the Saturn was such a horrible. I don't want to say it was horrible because it had its good points, but if you were a Saturn owner like myself and you didn't have a PlayStation and you were seeing how much fun everybody's having with like the Resident Evils and the Jumping Flash and they had those really polished 3D polygons.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned Resident Evil, and I remember everybody's loving it on the PlayStation. And then the Saturn version came out, and it was just
awful.
Like,
We were so excited to get a Resident Evil, and it was so janky.
I had forgotten about that until you mentioned it.
Yeah, so here comes the N64 with its 3D technology, and now I'm gonna kill myself. I'm gonna be so mad because I can't remember, but they had partnered with the maker, a chip company, and they made a big deal out of it at the time when they were making the console. What was it called? I don't know. I'll probably throw it up on the thing later on, but for the video viewers, not so much for the audio.
Poor Mark.
Like Silicon something or other. Like it was like Silicon something, and it was kind of big because I think they were the same company that was like putting out all those awesome like special effects of Jurassic Park, movies like that, which had just come out recently in theaters. So here you had this Nintendo system with all these classic characters that we loved, and now we're getting them in the N64. So we got this N64 system out now, and it really was an awesome system. So I guess we'll just get things started after saying all that. How great it was for the couch co-op. I'm gonna go ahead and start it off with a single player game, and I don't know what other game I could start off with other than Mario 64. Super Mario 64 was probably still my favorite N64 game.
Yeah, like I said before, just a huge milestone. When it was a good month, I think, before it was actually released into the wild that you could buy one, that they would have the kiosks at like a Toys R Us or Blockbuster Video, I think, had them. And,
big promotion between Blockbuster and Toys R Us didn't have the promotions, but they did have the kiosk, and that's where I first saw it. Was a Toys R Us,
and it was just amazing, just in all the different nuances that you could do with like the analog controls. Like if you pushed it a little bit and he would tiptoe and just walk, and then a full run, and they had the Z button on the bottom.
That was the first thing I remember too, is like looking, and they had that controller and it was on that little stiff arm, and you're looking at it, and there's all these buttons. Because you went from like 2 buttons on the NES controller to the 2 shoulder and 4 buttons on the face of the Super Nintendo.
It is kind of the most alien looking. Lack of a better.
It was not a pad. It really wasn't. It was just an object. I don't know how else to describe it.
And I feel like I had already read like in a magazine or something, because this was not really so much internet. I mean, internet was a thing. America Online, but it wasn't like, not every household was online basically at this time.
It was definitely in its infancy.
And
there weren't a lot of Nintendo related.
I feel like
websites.
I had seen like an article or something explaining how you hold the Nintendo 64 controller. That you would, with your left hand, you would grip. If you're using the analog, you would hold that middle part. And if you wanted to use the D-pad, then you would grip, both.
So you just knew to hold it in a certain way. Whereas I'm looking at it, I'm like,
I feel like I already knew how to grip it because I had read previously. But yeah, if you didn't know, I could totally understand. Like, how do you even hold this thing?
Right. But with a Mario game, like anytime for a long time, Nintendo would put out a new system, that Mario game would come out and it would teach you what all the buttons did so naturally. And you had the four triangles that controlled the camera.
Yeah.
Which right off the bat, the camera in the Mario 64 was really, really good. And you didn't really appreciate it at the time until you started playing all the clones that started coming out afterwards, and none of them could touch the camera and how I say smooth.
And it's interesting with the controls too, because you mentioned it had so many buttons all over it, but I think that there was kind of it had these extra buttons, but like those yellow C stick, well, it wasn't a stick, that was GameCube, but the camera buttons, were smaller. Yeah. And there were like the two main buttons.
Yeah,
like,
the A button was like a big green.
The dominant buttons.
Or was that? Am I once again thinking of GameCube?
That's GameCube also. I guess they weren't
red.
as big as like on GameCube, but they were bigger though than like the C buttons.
You knew those were the main buttons.
And, that they would try to focus on, like with Mario, it's like mainly it's just gonna be this jump and this button.
Yeah, the analog moves him around. Then you have your action buttons, I guess, like jump and all those things. But then you realize
it gives you like the option for even more, because then you got your shoulder buttons and this Z button.
You're for sure rewarded if you explored around a little bit, and you're standing outside in front of the castle, and you have that open world. And for the first time ever in a Mario game, you weren't just confronted by an enemy. You were encouraged to kind of explore around, climb up a tree, go take a dip in the moat, walk in through a door, and then you got these what am I supposed to do?
Yeah, you definitely had that area you could just run around before you get up to the castle and really start into the game. So you're just running circles and just figuring controls out.
Yeah, for the longest time, I didn't know what I was supposed to do, and then you finally find like that picture and you just sort of instinctively jumped into it, and then you're transported into this gigantic 3D world that you'd never seen or imagined before. At least for me, because I didn't have a PlayStation, and just being so blown away. All kinds of games that came after Mario 64, Super Mario 64, everything, because it really ignited that 3D sandbox craze that every single character of Nintendo or whomever got the treatment, whether it was Sega and Sonic. They were all trying to make the same thing happen that Mario made with Super Mario 64. And the Miyamoto is just such a genius. He's still cranking along now, but
the level design genius of just the early levels that would teach you things and you don't even know you're being taught. You don't even.
He was always the best at that, for sure.
You're basically going through a tutorial, but you're just, unbeknownst of you, you're just having fun. But it's teaching you that there's a sleeping piranha plant and you should just tiptoe past him and he won't wake up and snap at you. But if you run past him, he wakes up.
Yeah, and also the collecting stars was like a big thing then too, because you could beat the game, but then you could spend so much time afterwards trying to 100% everything. And you knew that there would be stars in that world because there would be like that dotted outline.
Yeah.
So you collect a star and like it would be like the third star of like 3. They still do it today.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, some early part of that stage I didn't get a star. I got to go back and find that.
You see the doors in the castle that you have to have 5 stars to get past this point.
And they made it very obvious. Like there's a door that says 5 or 10 or 20 or whatever. Yeah. Like you knew that you need to keep going back and finding those stars, and it didn't hold your hand. You just knew what to do, and man, you got to give them a lot of credit for that.
Yeah.
Just to nail a game right out of the gate in 64, Super Mario 64, awesome game. I love it. That's my first game. Beat it if you can, Nick.
There's no way. It was your best Nintendo 64 game of all. Right?
I should have maybe saved that one.
Yeah. So what am I gonna pick? I'm gonna do Mario Party, just because it's that not Mario Party 1, mind you, but as a series.
Oh, so you're gonna cheat a little bit and say as a collective.
I'm gonna cheat a little bit just because I think of the Mario Party games on Nintendo 64, definitely two I played the most. But because I don't want to say one, because while one started it all and was great, it was also the one that had the mini games with the 360, where you're like going really fast. You get the blisters on your hands.
Nintendo hated your hand, apparently.
So,
I remember that.
yeah, that was awful. But but Mario Party was just the start. I think. Well, I think there's another game on our list that was actually the start, but it was definitely one of the party games that we played. That when.
Yeah, thanks for bailing me out on the couch console like concept that I was raving about in 64. Like you actually pick a game where
Yeah, I mean, I had to pick that because of the party aspect of it, and because like Rebecca and Eric, and if Mark was in town, Mark would be there. But we would all get together and play these party games, and those were good days.
Yeah, and you could they were for sure good days. And when I think of N64, I think of my friends and stuff, almost as much as I do the games, because of all the memories. And if you had a favorite character, you could become like that avatar.
Yeah.
And some people might fight over the same ones, but somebody wanted to be Peach, they could be Peach.
Yeah.
Not everybody wants to be Mario. You had all these other characters to play with, and
and I think we mentioned, the Nintendo 64 being such a party console, but I don't think we really mentioned that. I think it was the first of the consoles to actually have 4 controller ports built in.
No, you're right.
The other systems, like had the adapter, like the Super Nintendo had the adapter.
Yeah, there's like the Turbo Tap and all these other
NES
things.
had its adapter, but
and it would get released for a specific game, and then it would not get used again. And usually they were sports games, but Nintendo was like right off the bat, boom, 4 players.
They would use it
Go
for, like,
forth
Super
and
Bomberman.
party on. Go forth and Mario Party.
Yeah, they just built that thing out of the box that it's meant for.
And in a way, it was those controllers, getting those extra controllers were a little pricey.
Yeah.
Even to this day, Nintendo still gouges you a little bit with the controllers. Yeah. But I remember it like being a big deal, getting like the different colors.
So everybody would know which one was theirs.
Yeah, it became more personal. It was the first machine to really kind of do that thing where you could kind of personalize your system a bit more. Get the yellow controller, the green controller, the blue, every color you can almost imagine they would have. So like you had your gray ones, and then you're like, I don't want that gray one anymore. Like I want the red one because red's my favorite color.
Right.
So it became expensive, but I didn't mind because I knew I was getting so much use out of it. And Mario Party is definitely a game like Logan to this day still loves. They're up to 10 now.
Oh wow!
And that's just counting your mainline console
I've
games.
I've kind of fallen off I don't really play the Mario Party games anymore, but kind of lost interest after like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, when you count handhelds and all that other stuff, like there's just so many Mario Party games, and it's like a sports franchise. They just sort of tweak a little bit here and there, and the concepts aren't really that far off from one year to the next. And maybe that's why like most people aren't going to get every single game every single year.
It was so good too about being able to even out that playing field, that because you got your group of friends over, and there's always like the one guy's like great at video games, and there's somebody else that you're just like, oh come on, and you got to join in and play, but maybe they're not that good and kind of timid or whatever, but it would even that out, and so everybody was kind of on an even playing field, that because it would throw you those bonus coins or whatever for like whatever different
you could catch up, and even if you didn't get the highest score, like you could excel in other things of the game.
So often, I mean, you never could tell who was going to win Mario Party. I mean, it was always up in the air.
It was until the very end, and it was very much luck or whoever had the last go. But that's just kind of a staple of a lot of these games we're talking about. Easy to pick up, hard to master, and sometimes maybe not this one so much. Like you said, it was.
Yeah, a lot of things are the roll of the dice with that, but
right. But one thing I remember too about Mario Party was really loving board games, and kind of you would get a board game that would come to a console like a Family Feud or a Monopoly or whatever, and it just never translated very well. This took that concept of an actual board and you're moving your pieces around.
And it comes alive.
Yeah, it comes alive, and it was like really the first game I thought that nailed that board game aspect of it. And I think too is a big part of that was you were never too bored because between every couple of turns you were like off doing this mini game. So yeah, that's a real good pick. I wouldn't have thought of that one. It's funny you bring that one up because it's always been there. But when I think of N64 games, I don't really think of the Mario Party series. So that's a good one. Didn't beat my Mario 64, but it had Mario in it. And I guess with my next pick, we're just going to continue that Mario train, and I'm going to go with Mario Kart 64. Super Mario 64, the platformer, the 3D platformer, that game is a better game. But I'm sure I got more time out of the Mario Kart 64 game.
I mean, Mario Kart, when the group, the group was over playing, it was always Mario Kart.
Yeah, there's always a bunch of people. There was always at least 4. And, people, standing out waiting their turn, just kind of like at an arcade, waiting your turn. Mario Kart 64, even though it wasn't the very first Mario Kart game, because that came out.
It felt like it for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, and it's funny, we were talking about Mario Kart games before, and I forgot Super Mario Kart.
Yeah. Was
it Super Mario Kart?
It was just straight up Super Mario Kart.
Super Mario Kart for the Super Nintendo. And, that game, if it didn't have Mario characters in it, it probably wouldn't have been as big a seller as it was, because I don't feel like that game is that fun. Might get some heat for that. But it felt like F-Zero with Mario characters, but I thought F-Zero was more fun. I thought it played better. So
Mario Kart 64 really put it on the map.
It took the concept of kart racing and made it a thing that others, again, try to emulate on other systems. Whether it be Crash or Sonic, they were all chasing the Mario Kart. And it's because they nailed it so much. Having the ability to not only outrace your opponent, but to hit your opponent with weapons that were in the world of Mario.
Throw turtle shells.
Turtle shells, the dreaded blue shell that you would, you'd hear it coming, or if you're in the middle of the pack and you see that blue shell coming, you just kind of like, oh, here it comes.
Whizzes by.
And if you're racing in first, you might hit the brakes and let that poor stat behind you go ahead, and they're like, oh, like I was always that guy in second thinking, oh man, he stopped for some reason, and then boom, I would get hit. But again, it was like one of those things where everybody got their favorite. Mark, of course, was always Toad. He had to be Toad, and that's cool. And nobody else really wanted to be Toad, but he was Toad, and he would always say that I'm the best.
I guarantee he's saying it right now.
He's probably saying it right now as he hears it. Like, I'm the best still. But yeah, that was great. I guess we both kind of liked Luigi, but I don't care if like one of us did get to be Luigi. You had so many others to choose from. Yeah. It was never a big deal, and it continued that trend of taking all of the history that Nintendo had and putting it in this multiplayer game that anybody could pick up and start playing. You didn't have to be really good at racing games like Daytona to pick up Mario Kart and have a great time and come in first place.
Yeah.
Because they had that rubber band thing going on where, if you were in last, you could easily get back to the middle of the pack or even first.
Yeah,
with a couple of
you the Starman, the blue shell,
whatever. So, I don't know how many times I went from first to last and just not being like, couldn't believe it. Yeah. You always had that guy who was really good at Mario Kart, but you can't help it if you get blue shelled and then you got a red shell coming after you and then a Starman, you're going to get past.
It had its ways of evening out the playing field, but it wasn't quite as like Mario Party where you just had no idea anything could go.
Well, that was randomized. This skill.
This definitely had more skill.
Like you weren't going to be in first if you just couldn't stop running into the walls and stuff. But remember games like Rainbow Road, like the tracks.
Oh man, wow, yeah.
And another thing too about the Mario Kart 64 is like there were those shortcuts that like I don't really feel like any of the Mario Kart games since has taken advantage of.
Yeah.
You'd almost hate it because like there's that one level where you jump up the ramp through the cave.
A lot of those shortcuts were just
exploits. Yeah. Rainbow Road in particular, where if you had the courage to take that dive, you were gonna win because
and like hopping over the wall on the Wario Stadium.
Yep.
I used to do that.
Oh yeah, me
everybody
too,
would take off, and I would back up.
You didn't even care if you messed up. You're just like, you guys go on and race for second.
And there's a few times that I actually did it, and then I'm like super ahead of everybody else. And other times where I just never could get it right, and they've already laughed me. They've already started going around.
You'd have to make that choice. Like, well, what point do I give up and just start racing? Because like, since it is Mario Kart, I can get a couple power ups and be right back in it. Yeah. But oh man, I love those games. It's some of those tracks and the multiplayer. Like Block Fortress is like my favorite.
Yeah.
Multiplayer level that there ever was in the Mario Kart game, and just continue that trend, man. I'm gonna pound it home again and again and again. N64 was the couch co-op console, and N64, I love it. And the more I think about it, and even my T-shirt kind of shows it off here. Like, I was a big fan of the N64. Yeah. So Mario Kart 64, that's my number 2. Nick, what's your number 2?
All right, I'm gonna go with another kind of it's a series, but it's the start of this series, and so I think it's important. It's another huge milestone. But Super Smash Brothers.
Imagine me and you, and you and me, so happy commercial together.
Yeah, you definitely need to pull out that commercial.
Me and you and me, no matter how they toss the dice, it had to be the only one for me is you.
Something's gone wrong in the happy-go-lucky world of Nintendo. Introducing Super Smash Brothers, where all your favorite characters go toe-to-toe in one 4-player star-studded slam fest. Only on Nintendo 64.
Oh, I will, because when I think of
because
Smash
the
Bros.
whole concept, those guys they're dressed up as the Nintendo mascots, and they're just kind of like dancing around through a field or whatever.
Yeah, they're just skipping along arm in arm, and then like Yoshi or one of them like turns and like clocks Mario,
punching like on Pikachu.
And that commercial sold the game perfectly. I was like, wait a second, I could beat other characters up. This is great, and it was a fighting game in a time when Nintendo didn't try to. They weren't kind of like trying to be the next Street Fighter. They were looking for their own thing, and they nailed it in a very Nintendo way.
Yeah, definitely more of a party fighting game than your serious like one-on-one fighting game. A lot of chaos.
Chaos is that game in a nutshell, and like even the like health bars and stuff are really kind of confusing to grasp.
Yeah, because there is no health bar per se, but your percentage of damage, and so the higher your percentage, the further you'll fly away.
Oh yeah, you get blasted off, and then you go onto that like little secondary bubble, and then you're trying to get your way back onto the platform. And the backgrounds were very interactive to the characters, and they were like as much a character. You're fighting the backgrounds as much as you are the other characters.
Yeah. Oh man, how many times is it you die because of something in the background?
Many times. But like it added that chaos factor that you were talking about. It is an awesome game, and it was, again, if Mario Kart, you were excited to play only Mario characters, like now you're playing Smash Bros, where all of the Nintendo licenses had come together for the first time. Like you said, it was a big milestone.
Yeah.
And no one else, again, Nintendo did it first and has done it best. No other.
That's what really the main thing I remember when I first heard about that game is like, I can be Mario fighting Link.
Yeah.
Or Samus.
Samus versus Pikachu.
Yeah.
In what world would you ever imagine that? It
was so cool.
Yeah, that's a great pick. I was never good at Smash Brothers at all, but I didn't care.
I don't really remember that we ever really played it much. It's like those party kind of game get-togethers.
I don't think we did either. I don't know why. Maybe we were just into other games, but I liked it.
Just too busy playing the Mario Kart and Mario Party. And
yeah. I mean, you can only play so many games. And it was like, it's very much one of those things where you pop it in and play for a few matches and you're done with it. Whereas some other games you might play longer. But it's a game where you can easily get into and play and get kind of good, but then a really, like a pro gamer still can kick your butt.
Yeah. Yeah, and even more so, I think, with the newer ones in those Smash Brother titles, they've definitely refined it. But yeah.
Yeah, they have
absolutely.
leagues, like actual pro gamer leagues, where Smash Bros is in there just as much as Street Fighter. Super Smash Brothers is a really good game, and it fits right into that motif that I'm going for of the party game and the couch co-op. And even though those games got better and better, this probably a lot of Smash Brothers fans aren't gonna. It's not gonna be their favorite.
But Ella and I don't think we mentioned either that just a lot of the now it wasn't in this first one, but with the newer games, I mean they've got all these guest stars and stuff now. Like Sonic the Hedgehog is in it now. I mean,
Nintendo makes a huge deal. Like on Twitter, they'll announce like coming this month. Like they'll throw in like the Duck Hunt dog or Rob the Robot.
Yeah.
Or you'll get those cross platform.
I love seeing those obscure like old characters like Duck
me
Hunt
too.
dog.
And I love that people are like, oh, I want the Ice Climbers. Like when would you ever even clamor for the Ice Climbers?
Mr. Game and Watch.
Oh, Mr. Game & Watch is
Yeah.
awesome. I love that Nintendo. I mean, they know that people love the history, and they just keep dropping these in.
I love those obscure like references to. the
But
old
then they would
things.
go even more. They would go even further and get like Sonic and Pac-Man
Pac-Man
and Mega Man, and like they just really didn't
make
belong.
those deals with the other companies.
And they would all play nice. Whereas back in the console war days, that would never happen.
No.
Like Sonic would assume spit on Mario, just as soon spit on him than he would, be in the same game with him. Now they're running along side by side in Rio.
They're at the Olympics.
They are, man. They're competing in the Olympics. They're like brothers nowadays. I always find that kind of interesting. So that's a really good pick as your second. So we're gonna go to my third. I'm gonna get into the continue with the multiplayer, and I can't do a list of N64 games without mentioning the granddaddy of console first-person shooters,
GoldenEye.
GoldenEye. and GoldenEye was the first console first-person shooter style game to really get it right. I mean, there were Doom. I remember came out as a port. But who would imagine that a license or a property like 007 would be such a huge hit on a Nintendo console? It really doesn't make any sense. It never should have been the big deal that it was.
If to my knowledge, I think it was the first too that it would have wherever you hit the opponent, caused more damage. Like if you hit him in the leg, you got very little damage. But if you hit him in the head, that's
oh yeah,
high,
a headshot
high
is more of a crit
Yeah.
hit than yeah, you're right. It's a body. You became aware of that more.
Yeah, so you would aim for certain spots, whereas games like Doom, it was just
Yeah, you just plowing through people with the Gatling gun. Yeah, and respawn points. I remember the campers being a big problem, especially with the 4 players. You just a person would die, you knew where they were.
I'm gonna have to look up. There's this picture I've seen where it was something about co-op like back in the day, and they had like cardboard taped to the TV to like split the screen so you're not
I wish
looking.
I'd thought of that because you couldn't help but feel suspicious, like when you got like hit out of nowhere.
Stop looking at my corner of the
I
screen.
swear I'm not doing it. Like
I'm
right.
not looking. Your eyes are wandering. You say you're not, but they are.
Yeah, and if you play that map again and again and again and again, even if like you catch it in your peripheral vision, like there's that little.
Like, sometimes you just can't help it.
Can't help it.
You're
You're
not
just
really
so familiar
trying
with the
to,
map.
but you just happen to see. Oh, I know where they are.
And if they respawn, they're only going to pop up in a handful of different places anyway.
Yeah.
But I remember like.
Yeah, and that you talk about respawning because I remember that one in particular because I knew like there was like that bathroom was like a respawn point.
Yep.
And he had those like bombs that you could set with the watch. Mm-hmm. So you would set bombs like
The proximity mines.
Yeah.
You had bastards with that proximity mine that would just turtle themselves in that area. And if you had a multiplayer, you see like the screen hasn't moved in a while. You're like, I'm not going in that bathroom, you son of a bitch. I'm not doing it. Or you would try to take your time and you could shoot them and they would explode.
Yeah.
If you'd see him, you pew, pew, pew. But I mean, yeah, but it was awesome. Everybody had their own style of play. And I remember it was the first time like rocket launchers were a thing. I remember just cracking up because I was working at Babbage's at the time and we had an N64 demo unit on the counter, and GoldenEye was in there for a while. And we'd just sit, and rocket ourselves. We'd look down and blow ourselves up. And we would just laugh. It was like, PC gamers had that experience, but console gamers for the first time with the analog, you could kind of get close. Like you didn't have a keyboard and mouse, but you could get close, and it would get closer and closer as time goes on. But GoldenEye it came at the right time. Part of it too might have been that there was like a real game drought for the N64, and it came during a time, and it was a good game. It was a rare game, so rare meant quality on N64.
Oh, absolutely.
That partnership was among the best all-time partnerships for many first-party developer. Third. I guess they'd be third party because Nintendo would be first party.
Yeah.
But they were exclusive to Nintendo. They didn't really do that much back in the day.
Right.
You could have a Capcom game and never their systems, but that was exclusive to Nintendo. And anytime they released a game, it was a big deal. But it just so happened that GoldenEye was a fun game, and I have so many fond memories of that game. Like there would be no Halo if there wasn't GoldenEye.
I gotta say though, as great as GoldenEye was, and just such a huge impact on gaming of that time, it hasn't aged well, I don't think, though.
Well, and some of these games, probably a lot of these.
Well,
games
I mean, I think you can go back to Mario 64, and you still play that, and it's just such nostalgia.
It's still very playable.
But and it, the poly count is low on it. But,
it is.
But when you look at GoldenEye, and it's got like those block hands, like holding the gun.
Time hasn't been all that kind to GoldenEye.
That game had a huge impact, though.
Yeah, it was a fun game. It was a game that I'll always remember fondly, even if it's not something. And GoldenEye as a franchise has been long dead. It never went beyond that one game.
Well, it's interesting you say that because they did like remake it. I want to say on like Xbox 360. And
we had a version
3.
of GoldenEye that came
was
out.
Yeah, it was like Reloaded or something like that. And because I forget what console it was, but I got it thinking like, GoldenEye was great. I just could not get into the remake though. It just
other first-person shooters had spoiled us at that point.
Yeah, I guess so because
it's a relic that you have to just leave in the past.
I mean, and they had like totally redone it, but I just still couldn't get into it.
Well, even games like Perfect Dark Zero, made by Rare, I mean, they just so further advanced.
I didn't even originally when it was on Nintendo 64, and there are those that love Perfect Dark.
Oh yeah, they want new games all the time.
But I couldn't get into Perfect Dark. I was all over GoldenEye, but I didn't get into Perfect Dark.
Me neither. And I don't know why. It's just GoldenEye was just like one of those things. It was lightning in a bottle. It wasn't until that Xbox came out that first-person shooter games became a thing again.
Yeah.
But yeah, GoldenEye. That's my number 3.
Okay, so mine.
You're up.
The new Tetris.
Sweet blocks.
Yeah, the sweet blocks.
Oh yeah,
the new Tetris. And I gotta say, because usually, and they seem to kind of come out with like a new Tetris game every little bit. And
Puyo Puyo Tetris, just got that.
But that looks good.
It's fun.
I want to try it out on Switch.
Yeah, especially if you're new to Puyo Puyo like I am.
Yeah, I have no idea.
It reminds me of Dr. Mario a little bit. But anyways, I won't derail you.
Connect the colors. That's all I know about it.
Mm-hmm.
But every time there's a new Tetris game, it's never quite the same as like the original, like either on the Nintendo or the Game Boy, whichever one.
The first
you
one.
may be playing, because you got that music going in your head and whatever, and it's classic. But the new Tetris on Nintendo 64, that one, because it gave you the 4 players.
4 players. I was just sitting there thinking, once again, 4 players.
They always seem to try to do their new gimmick, and the sweet block, which is what we called it.
That's
I'm
what
not
we
even
It wasn't
sure.
called that really.
I don't even really know what they called it, but we called it the sweet block. That I love that gimmick though. That one really worked, and that was, what was it? It was like if you put together.
It would form like one big square.
They had to be like the same type of like matching. You had to make a square.
Yeah.
Instead of just like the Tetris with 4 lines, but somehow you made a square. And
I don't remember what the mechanic was specifically to make that what.
I think there were 2 kinds of sweet blocks too. Like there was a gold one and a silver one.
I remember the gold one, yeah.
But I'd have to look it up. I don't even remember anymore. But it was always so satisfying.
Oh,
we were
yeah.
always like, oh, I got the sweet block.
Even if you were playing against another player and you see that sweet block, you had to admire him a little bit. Like, oh, nice job on that sweet block.
Oh yeah, I mean that particular version of Tetris, I remember fondly.
That's a good pick, Nick, because even though I never owned that game, I played it over at your house, and we did have so much fun. I remember playing that with like Eric, and others. But
Rebecca, I'm sure.
Yeah, not to leave anybody out. We were all like, anytime a new game came out, we were always landing back at your place, your parents. But yeah, they brought in the 4-player, which I think was a first, and you had the sweet block mechanic, and you add that to a tried and true recipe of Tetris, and you got hours and hours of fun.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a Mario game, but it was something that you could change up. You could change it up a little bit. Like if you didn't feel like doing Smash Brothers or karting, you could throw in the Tetris, and you got that familiar Tetris game, but on the next level. Yeah. So I don't really have a whole lot to say about Tetris. I guess to add to it,
I don't really either, other than the sweet block and
it
4
earns
players.
When you said Tetris, sweet block is what came to my mind. And other people, maybe they had their own names for it, or maybe they just called it what it was supposed to be called.
But in our clique, it was the sweet block.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that pick for sure. All right, so that's your third. I go to my fourth. I'm gonna go with Super Mario Golf 64, or maybe it was just Mario Golf 64.
Yeah, I think it was just Mario Golf.
Yeah, it wasn't Super. Super was the Super Nintendo. Everything was just 64.
Yeah, just like how
Nintendo.
Mario Kart, it went from Super Mario Kart to Mario Kart 64.
But it was Super Mario 64, so man, that's just throwing me off. But at any rate, it's Mario Golf 64. I would never imagine that a golf game would get me as hyped as the Mario Golf did.
Yeah, I'd never really played a golf game until then, but loved Mario Golf.
Mario Golf got me into real golf.
Yeah.
I remember
you and I used to go to the driving range.
Yeah, we go to the driving range all the time. And,
because of Mario Golf.
At first I'd get like a driver, and then because then you could just go to the driving range. But then it like went it's like a full-on set of golf clubs and play, and I attribute that to Mario Golf completely.
And the funny thing is, they've had new Mario Golf game. I almost said kart.
I know.
Mario Golf games come out since then, but I never really liked.
Yeah, Toadstool Tour for
as...
the GameCube came out, and a lot of people like it, but it never recaptured that.
It something felt different about it, and I didn't like it as much as the Nintendo 64 one. It looked prettier.
It was prettier. It introduced more characters. Gave us Baby Mario. Mario Golf did if I'm not mistaken. Well, no, I guess really Yoshi's Island gave us Baby Mario, but as a playable character, I think that might have been
was that like the first sports game he was in? Maybe.
I think so.
I know tennis was the first to have Waluigi, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Waluigi wasn't a character in the Wario Land games, was he?
That character was created for. I think it was tennis. It was one of the sports games.
Yeah, and tennis was, tennis deserves an honorable mention because but there had been other good tennis games come out over the years. Like I still remember like playing old tennis games and thinking they were kind of fun, but never a golf game.
Yeah.
But it taught you the basics of golf. There were silly things about it, but I mean, at its core, it was a very earnest golf game.
I would argue, I think that we played more Mario Golf than Mario Kart.
Yeah, when I think Mario Golf, I just think about like Taco Bell and Zima's and like kicking back. And we're dating this a little bit from the Zimas alone. But yeah, I think you're right. Mario Golf. In fact, I remember kind of a bittersweet memory too of Mario Golf. Like we were playing Mario Golf like right before you moved out to California. It was one of my last memories too. Like before you leaving to go to California, like we were playing some Mario Kart over at Ruth's place, I guess it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was like our growing up game. We were all moving out, had our own places,
becoming adults,
and taking our N64s with us. But yeah, that Mario Golf again. I don't have a whole lot to say about it because it is just golf. Yeah, but there was something special about the 4 players.
Definitely one of my favorite Nintendo 64 games.
It's up there with Mario and Mario Kart for sure.
So that one was
that was my 4.
So I got Okay, I'm going to do a very obscure one that probably nobody else has even played, let alone heard of.
Okay, so
But
we're gonna lose some people, maybe.
but it's one of my favorites. Goemon's Great Adventure. Uh, I don't even really know how to start with this, other than honestly, I don't even know how I came to even get this game.
I've never heard of it.
But
You've completely stumped me on this game.
I think probably I saw like a review or something in a magazine, like Game Fan or something, and it piqued my interest, and I bought it. But the big thing I remember, as soon as I opened the game up and I put it in, and as soon as it starts up, it was just I was just captured by the theme song. I mean, it just started up with like the Goemon's theme song, and I'll have to get you a video and you'll have to play that. But it was from that point.
Don't worry, Nick. I'm gonna have some of that music playing right now.
It was from that point that I was just like, this is so fun.
We're off to a good start.
I haven't even started the game yet, and I've already love it.
Well, from the name alone, I'm guessing it was kind of like popular in Japan, maybe.
Yeah, I mean it's a Japanese character, and I really am not all that terribly familiar with Goemon, but I think it was like a series or whatever. But and I think it very much played a lot of different ways, because it had a kind of a 2D elements to it, where kind of a 2D platformer kind of element where you might jump.
I was going to be my question is like, how did it play? Like,
but it also had kind of an open world kind of thing, almost like Zelda, and and then there were elements where you would hop inside this giant mech and have like these boss battles like in this mech. But throughout the entire game, it was just filled with that quirky Japanese humor.
Oh yeah,
and,
love it or hate it. It's
and I was one that loved it.
Yeah,
and I don't think you really ever got it.
Not really.
I remember, back in the day, I'd try to share stuff like that with you, and you would just not get it.
I just wouldn't get it. Like, yeah, you were really big into like Ranma half and other anime stuff. I would even Pokemon really. I remember like you were like, it was on your radar way more than it was mine.
Yeah.
And I'll look at it and I'm like, I get it. I could always appreciate it for what it was. It just wasn't. I was more into Beavis and Butthead, I guess, at the time. More refined, that American culture.
That was definitely, and I was getting into like the different animes and manga and whatnot, and it wasn't really a thing here in the States at all. I mean, it's huge now. Like,
yeah, Suncoast Video would have like a little small section in the back of the store dedicated to it. So it was a niche thing, but
yeah, I mean that's going to be my obscure one on the list, but
I love it.
I really enjoyed that game.
Yeah, that's great. I like that we got a 10. One of our 10 favorite games is a game that I've never even heard of. That's so perfect.
I mean, you can't just have. I mean, you got to throw in some crazy stuff in there. You can't just always have like the same. Like everybody's always going to have. Mario 64.
Yeah.
Top Nintendo 64 game of all time.
And there's some games.
Spice it up a little bit.
I've got some honorable mention games, which I guess I'm going to go over because like my last pick's coming up after this, so I'm going to maybe get some honorable mentions out of the way.
Okay.
Games that I really liked and remember fondly, but just I couldn't put them on the list. Maybe they could have been on your list after that game, but just kidding. Banjo-Kazooie.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, because it was the whole kind of, hunt and collect kind of concept of those games, right?
Yeah, it popularized it, and it also was like one of those games where like it kind of continued on that mascot thing where it was huge in the 16-bit era. It was kind of dying off, but like they were doing it really well. Like Banjo and Kazooie were really cute.
Everybody's trying to make their own mascot.
Everybody's trying to make their own mascot, and it was a Rare game, so it continued along that excellence of Rare N64 games. And it wasn't as good as Mario 64, but there was for sure a quality to it. Yeah. And, I played quite a bit of it. There was a sequel that came out. There's been a couple. Banjo-Tooie. I didn't get into it nearly as much as the first one. I was really kind of like burnt out, I think, of the collectathons.
Yeah.
And it's funny, too, because some of those games are making a comeback. You got the spiritual successor of Banjo-Kazooie, the, what's it called?
I was trying to think of the name of it just now. I saw it in the store the other day.
You're like a lizard.
Yeah. It starts with a K, I think, maybe. I don't know.
It'll pop up right over here. sorry, audio viewers, your listeners, you're gonna get cut out. No, let's think. I can't think of it. I just can't. But yeah, that game is kind of a thing now. And of course, there was a Donkey Kong 64 version that came out. That was, we were talking about before, like was or may not have been a good game. Because we really weren't interested in it anymore. Those types of games. But yeah, like I liked Banjo-Kazooie enough to even consider it in my top 5. There was a really good series of baseball games that I liked a whole lot. All-Star Baseball that I really dug.
Yoka and Laylee?
Ukulele.
Oh, ukulele?
Ukulele, yeah. Ukulele.
What is it? Yeah, okay, ukulele.
Ukulele, yeah.
Okay.
So there's a fondness and a retro, thing happening there. Where, like Ratchet and Clank had a new game come out for PlayStation 4, which was really just like a remake of the original. But there's a desire to have those games again, but they all started on N64.
That makes so much sense now with Banjo and Kazooie.
Yeah.
Ukulele. I get it now. Okay.
Yeah. So
I saw it on the shelf and I couldn't remember.
That's okay. I mean, we're neither one of us are going to buy that game probably. It's coming out for the Switch. Who knows? And one other, I guess, honorable mention is I'll throw in the South Park game. It was not a good game at all. But it was like a shooter.
I totally forgot about that South Park game.
Yeah, it was like a shooter, and South Park was enormous at the time. So the graphics were like good, I guess, for the time. You had all like the little side characters like the aliens and the cows and Cartman, and they all said their little catchphrases when you shot.
Was like what was the little baby brother?
Ike.
I like
that. Don't kick the baby. Don't kick the baby. So I remember getting that game when I first moved out on my own, and we were in a house, and I brought the N64, with us, of course, and we'd play like the wrestling games and that South Park games, that game, not games. I thought there probably was a couple, but for that reason that I played that game a lot. A game doesn't have to be a great game for me to put it on my list. That's probably one of those games that almost made it. So those are my honorable mentions. You have any honorable mentions you'd like to mention?
Before I say my last one, honorable mention, I want to say Star Fox 64.
A lot of people are going to kick their computers, like, or yell at their...
It was really kind of a remake, I think, of the original Star Fox, but it was so great, and it also introduced that whole 4-player kind of arena, kind of dogfight sort of thing.
Star Fox 64 was what Star Fox 2 was going to be. If I remember correctly, there was the whole like Star Fox 2 was never released, even though it was mostly completed. And part of the reason why they didn't release it, I think, is because it was not all the way done, and they wanted something to come out for N64, so they just kind of held it back.
Yeah.
So Star Fox 64 is, I've never been the biggest Star Fox fan. I appreciate it
either, but it was fun. I mean, because like Eric had the original game, and so I never even bought the original game. But I did buy Star Fox 64.
The graphics were always cutting edge.
Yeah.
Like I say, they had a colorful cast of characters. Fox McCloud was always fun. You got Slippy. And you had your escort missions were like a big thing for Star Fox 64. Like that was a jump.
Do a barrel roll.
Yeah, do a barrel roll. But yeah, that's deserving. Like I could never talk in depth about Star Fox 64, but I appreciate it for what it was.
And I'll throw in one more too. Yoshi's Story. It was a cute little game, and I think, if I remember right, it was kind of the first that really kind of defined the characteristics of Yoshi that we kind of see now, like the different sounds.
The cuteness.
The cuteness that sounds that he makes. Or she, I don't even really know what Yoshi is, but yeah.
He's a dinosaur, I guess.
Yeah, but...
I suppose.
Yeah, but he, she, I don't know.
Oh, you meant it's sex, yeah.
But
well, but I guess he's a boy because they had later have like more feminine Yoshis in other games, maybe. Like if you had a bow in your hair, you were just
that's Birdo though. Birdo's not Yoshi.
Well, no, I know Birdo's not Yoshi, but maybe it's just because they had all those different Yoshi colors.
There's lots of colors.
Okay, maybe there was no bow. I made that up. I want Yoshi to be a boy really bad for some reason.
Yeah, but So on to my last one.
No, it's mine. I think I kind of paused for honorable mentions, but my fifth game.
Oh yeah, your last one. Okay.
I'm gonna wrap up my top five with Shadow of the Empire, Star Wars.
Oh man. Yeah.
It, is it my only game that's not some sort of Mario game? I think it is.
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, GoldenEye wasn't Mario.
Oh no, good point. GoldenEye.
But maybe like the only that's not either Mario or a party game.
Yeah. That game was awesome. Like for one reason alone, it let me be on Hoth.
That's what I was gonna say. It's like that was the first one that it just really gave you that feeling of the Hoth battle from Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
That just played it so well.
I couldn't get enough. They were really nailing the cinematics, and the look of it was, of course, really impressive for its time. That game, I'm sure, probably looks awful now, but there was a series of, and I almost maybe want to cheat a little bit, saying that like Mario Party for you, like there was a series of Nintendo exclusive games that were Star Wars, like Rogue Squadron, and this game, and there were just a ton of Star Wars games.
And it was always such a big joke that every time there was a new Star Wars game, that they've done the Hoth battle again.
Yeah,
but
yeah. Well,
it
it's
works
because
and
it's
it's
the best.
fun. It's I mean, everybody loves it.
Who doesn't want to take down an AT-AT?
It's improved every time.
Yeah,
so.
I'll to this day continue to take down AT-ATs. I don't care.
Absolutely.
Make it prettier. Like I was playing the pod game, the Star
maybe
Wars arcade.
if that's all that the game was, maybe you got something to argue. But
yeah, it was just
it's just one portion.
It was just a highlight. That's all. People remember it because it was such a notable thing. But this was like the first time you'd had some Super Nintendo Star Wars games.
Oh yeah, I mean there were other games that had a Hoth battle, but not like this. This was the first that was like in 3D.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I can't really remember a whole lot about the game other than the Hoth level because it was just such a great game. A lot of times I would just play that Hoth level and quit.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I'm done. This is it. This is why I paid the money for the game. I'm good. Yeah. I don't have to play any more of this game.
Most of the rest of the game, you're running around on foot shooting things as Dash Rendar, I think that was his name.
Yeah.
And the Hoth battle was just what really sold it.
Yeah, it was worth the price of admission alone. And I just kicking around the idea like, should I put Rogue Squadron on? Because Rogue Squadron's probably a better game. All around, but it let me be on Hoth, and for that alone, it's going to be in my top 5.
Milestone.
It was a milestone. It was the first really immersive Star Wars game, in a time like nowadays where there's just you got them in VR and you got your Battlefield. There's been all those Battlefield games, but now they're back with in a big way.
Yeah.
So that's my 5th pick.
All right, so on to mine. All right, now, since obviously we haven't said this game yet,
are we gonna say it?
Anybody watching knows it has to be coming, and so you started out with Mario 64, so I'm ending with Zelda 64.
Ocarina of Time.
Yes, and a lot of people will argue like that this is their favorite Zelda game like ever, and I can't say that. It was a great, great game, and I mean, we keep saying this word over and over and over, milestone, because it was the first 3D Zelda game. And I remember being like super anxious, like because my favorite Zeldas were 1 and 3, both of which were like that top-down formula. And I'm thinking, how can they do Zelda in 3D? I've seen now Mario been done in 3D. It's great. I love it. But for whatever reason, I still couldn't picture Zelda in 3D. But then I played it. There it was. It's great. It works.
It made sense.
Yeah, I mean, you're on this grand adventure, and then the rest is history. But like I was saying though, I still hold those other games as my favorites. But it's definitely up there. I mean, it's a great game.
Leaving Ocarina of Time off your top 10 list of N64 games would incite a riot just about anywhere.
Oh, yeah, it has to be there.
It's just sort of a given, and I'm with you. Ocarina of Time, I was swept up in the Ocarina of Time, madness or whatever. The fever.
Yeah.
I remember like pre-ordering it, and I had to get the gold cartridge because I think if you pre-ordered at a certain time, you get a gold cartridge.
That's just the thing, though. It wasn't a gold cartridge. It was like the first Zelda game that had no gold cartridge.
Well, I thought that there was a deal where you could get the gold cartridge if you.
I want to say it was a gold sticker. Well, maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know.
I feel like because I pre-ordered mine,
Yeah,
but I feel like mine's gray.
maybe I'm wrong. Okay. Well, I also got the
It had
guide.
shiny box. It had like something over the box that was shiny.
Yeah, I got the guide, and I took the day off work. Because, I mean, my favorite Zelda game is probably still Link to the Past. So this is the game following A Link to the Past, if you don't count the Game Boy games. I'm with you. Like, I loved Mario, and I was really anxious to see how they were going to approach it. And this game actually was covered quite extensively in magazines.
Yeah.
So, I knew there was going to be, like, boomerangs, and I'd already seen many screenshots of the game. So, this was kind of going into that period of time. In internet, like, I had internet, AOL or whatever, so I'd seen stuff about it. But, yeah, they really nailed how, like, a Zelda game should feel if it were in 3D. The dungeons were really well done.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed, like, the like, hub areas, the horse, being able to ride a horse for the first time felt just right. The scale of Zelda was like so much bigger than ever before. Mm-hmm. You take a game like nowadays with Breath of the Wild, and that's a huge game.
So story driven too.
Yeah.
Like Super Nintendo, A Link's to the Past. It was. I mean, it had like its little cutscenes, but it would just be like you'd walk up somewhere and just a little bit of text. But you're watching the story unfold.
It was epic.
Yeah.
It was an epic tale. The first one that really did that.
Yeah, like when you first walk up to Hyrule Castle, and the gate comes down and it's raining, and you see Ganondorf come out on the horse, kidnapping Zelda. Mm-hmm. It really gave you that epic feel.
That little "Hey, listen" guy, though. I gotta talk about. Yeah. Oh man. Every time you had
listen.
to like. Yeah. It's like really. I guess there's kind of a long line of annoying characters in Zelda games after this one. Well, what was the little guy from the Wind Waker? He's like a little jester guy.
Tingle?
Tingle? Yeah, Tingle was Tingle.
Oh yeah. Yeah, but he wasn't like following you around everywhere.
No, but he was like a Jar Jar Binks character though in a way. It was like really.
Tingle was actually introduced, I think, in Majora's Mask.
Oh, okay.
But,
never played Majora's Mask. See, I'm missing out. Well, I mean,
I haven't beat it. It was like the one I never really got into. And which people are probably yelling at their screens right now because
screw them. This is our list.
Yeah, because like in my mind, when Majora's Mask came out, it came out so quickly after Ocarina of Time.
Yeah.
That I felt like it wasn't like a full blown, like official, like Zelda title. It was more of just kind of a.
It would feel like an expansion pack. Yeah.
Yeah.
Today's
so I didn't really care at the time. Like, I'll wait for the next big Zelda,
And maybe that was wrong of us to think so, because I felt the very same way. A Zelda game, you're just trained and conditioned to know you're gonna have to wait 6-7 years or something for a new game to come out.
So I would. Well, and so I mean, I think you mentioned about how expensive the Nintendo 64 games were.
Yeah,
I
they
think
were like
earlier,
$70.
$70. Yeah. So I don't want to pay another $70 for this expansion pack, which in my mind is what it was. And
we didn't know what expansion packs were, DLC or anything like that.
So
but that's you got the.
So I did never buy it, and people love it. So I've gone back now and I've tried to revisit, and I've gone through a little bit, but I just haven't been captured by it, and I haven't really gone all the way through and beat it.
Yeah, it's held up there in some lists. Some people's Zelda list is one of the best. I'm with you. Like, it just never really appealed to me. And since then, we've gotten a lot of other like little side type Zelda games.
People seem to like it too, I think, because it's so dark, and maybe I don't like it for that reason. I don't know.
Isn't it too like there's like a time limit to it, kind of also?
Yeah, it's something about like I guess it's like Groundhog Day. I think you keep replaying like this day over and over, and because like the moon comes down And so then time goes back, and you have to do everything like within a certain amount of time before the world ends or whatever. I don't know.
It just strayed too far from the recipe that I liked.
Yeah,
It's like Zelda 2.
Even when
like,
I read these things about it, it's like that doesn't sound like Zelda to me. And
you're just forcing it into a Zelda game.
yeah,
That was our list of N64 games. A really solid list, I think, overall. The library of games wasn't always this great, but the cream of the crop was really good.
yeah. And if anybody else has seen or not seen but played, go on. It's a great adventure. Yeah, let me know.
Please comment. Like, don't let Nick think that he was the only one. Let whoever made the game know too. Make it feel good. Not that they're browsing the comment section of the BitGeek podcast, but if they are, you never know. They might be like, "Oh, thank God, one guy really liked it enough to put in his top 10." 5, really.
Yeah.
So once again, I've been Ron Avis,
And I'm Nick Wright.
the Prince of Pixels, and thanks for tuning in.